So my name is Rick Haskell, for those of you that don't know me, and this is MBA 640, Executive Financial Decision Making. What I want to do tonight is some of what you normally do in a new class on the first night, of course. For those of you that don't know, I kind of like to get a sense of who you are just a little bit, okay? I'll try to give you a better sense of me as well. Some of you already know my shtick, and I'm surprised you came back for more. Or maybe it's just I'm the only one that teaches this class, you had no choice, right?
That's a problem.
Yeah, I know, it's an issue.
We had no choices.
You're in the front row.
I know.
Okay, just want to make sure we're on the same page here, brother. Let me help you understand what I really am trying to get at in this class, because it's sometimes going to be hard to remember this, okay? You're going to think that this class is a class on asset valuation modeling, and in some respects it is. We're going to use a lot of modeling techniques, we're going to use a lot of Excel, we're going to use a lot of terminology, you're going to draw heavily on your finance understanding, and we're going to be putting together inputs and trying to get models and formulas to spit out numbers that should tell us what a firm or an asset, and a firm is simply a complex asset, right, should be worth, or a range of values that it might be worth, okay? There's an entire industry segment in finance that is valuation consultancy. And it happens to be a fairly lucrative part of the finance industry. I mean, most valuation consultants are well over six figures in their annual incomes after business expenses, etc. Not all, but most. But that's not what I'm trying to accomplish in the next 6 or 7 weeks with you. It's going to seem like that sometimes. What I'm trying to do, though, is to use asset valuation modeling as a lens through which we observe decisions made in the firm and how those affect the firm's value to its stakeholders. Okay? I'm a firm believer that every decision in a firm either creates or destroys value for the stakeholders, because it either enhances or reduces cash flows. There's very seldom a scenario in which you have a steady state where decisions are impotent, okay? So try to remember that that's actually what we're trying to get at. While we're in the midst of all the Exceling, calculating, time value of moneying, trying to go from book value construction of finance to market value construction, and just figuring out which end is up, okay? Let me give you a little bit of background for myself briefly, and then I need to hear a little bit from you guys, and then we'll keep going. So I've been here at Westminster for 3 years as a full-time faculty member. I was here for about 4 years prior to that, doing a little bit of adjunct work now and then as I was working on my doctorate in economics at the U. I was fortunate to be able to take a number of years off from my career to do that. Because I had, just a few years prior to working on my doctorate, I had sold an investment firm. I started my career with a little company by the name of Dean Witter in the early 1980s. And Dean Witter today is Morgan Stanley. And it wasn't a little firm at the time. It had about 10,000 retail brokers, of which I was one, which meant I was about that important to the firm, right? And there's a reason you couldn't see between my fingers. I had an opportunity to start as just a retail broker, go into management. I went to New York. My office was on the 72nd floor of the World Trade Center, Tower number 2. But I left there before the bad guys showed up, okay? Even still, that was a poignant experience watching that happen, as I'm sure it's poignant for you even today, seeing tape of it. I had an opportunity to take some resources that we developed after I left Dean Witter. And by the way, when I say left Dean Witter, what I mean is I got my ass handed to me on a plate as I got fired, okay? Because you don't get into a whizzing match with someone whose name is Executive Vice President. It's just not a healthy long-term experience. And at a very young age, I think I was 30 at the time, at a very young age I had the opportunity to learn that. And so I've not repeated that same mistake, okay? It was valuable for me for a lot of reasons. I went on to, I came back to Utah where my wife and I had gone to school. I'm from California. We owned part of a small business here that when we bought into it, it had about $5 million in revenues. So $5 million, that's not bad, right? And we thought we had legs to maybe go to $15 million over the next 5 years or so. And a couple of years later, as I found myself with some time on my hands, I realized that the company had made extraordinary progress. It had gone to $3 million in revenues, which you might recognize as the wrong direction. And so we weren't majority shareholders by any stretch, but it was a big investment to us. And so I stepped into the company, and about 4.5, almost 5 years later, separated my asset out and then sold that part as the company reached $60 million in revenues. And I had run it during those years. So I know a little bit, only a little bit, about. So what we're going to talk about in this class over the next 6 or 7 weeks is the accumulated understanding that I gained from some of those experiences and some academic knowledge I picked up while working on a doctorate and working with some folks at NYU Stearns, whom I'll introduce you to in a little bit here tonight, and just trying to better understand how firms, or investors for that matter, value assets and why they value them the way they do, and what decisions inside the firms affect those values and affect the returns to stakeholders. That sounds simple. You might say, well, look, moron, increase cash flow, increase profitability, increase value. Well, and sometimes, yeah, and sometimes, no. There are some other things going on, okay? So that's a little bit about myself. Tell me just a little bit about some of y'all. Walter, I know you a little bit, but do you know everybody else in the class?
Definitely a grand majority. I think we've shared some classes together.
Okay, all right. So we're going to pass on you. Sophia, I don't know you.
Well,
Are you supposed to be here?
yes.
Okay, all right, just
I'm in
check.
the right place.
Okay.
So, I'm Sophia, and I'm almost, like, I'll probably be done with the program next semester.
Okay. You sound like you have a little bit of an accent to your voice.
Yes.
Where are you from?
I'm from Morocco.
Oh, very good.
Yeah,
Wow,
Casablanca.
cool.
That's no, that's not where it is.
I don't know that I've ever met anyone from Morocco.
Not here, but East Coast, yes.
Alright.
Let's see. I don't have background in finance or anything. Right now I work in healthcare with the elderly Alzheimer's and dementia. So, and I just have to take this class because it's part of the program, so.
Yeah, it's one of those necessary evils, something you got to get through, kind of like having your teeth pulled, you know.
I know, I've
when-
heard.
Okay. Hey, if you're not planning to work in finance, is there any reason to take a class that is so intensely a finance-oriented course?
Of course.
Why, Robert?
Because pretty much no matter what organization you are in a company, you're gonna have to go to the finance
Can I get you to sit in one of the first 2 rows, please?
Yeah, I sure can.
Thank you.
No problem.
You're Shelby, right?
Yes.
Nice to meet you, Shelby.
Nice to meet you too.
I was
Well,
listening, Robert.
you're
Thank
fine.
you.
So you're gonna pretty much have to work with the finance department to be able to get things approved, make sure that you're on target, and lots of different reasons.
Well, and at the end of the day, you and your firm will be measured based upon how well it does financially. We're not in a society where the corporation is measured on how well it does with social equality and justice. Well, those might be important to some of us, right? I think they're probably critically important to some of us. But firms are measured, CEOs are measured based upon finance. And I promise you, if the CEO is measured that way, Lisa, when you're sitting in a company somewhere below the CEO perhaps, you're going to be measured the exact same way, whether you realize it or not. So I agree with you, Robert. Okay. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Josue, do they all know you?
I
know him.
I know Manny. I know like we had a couple classes. I took about a year of break from the last time that I took classes, so I don't know a lot of them.
Okay, well, this is my friend Josue.
Hi, I'm actually from Mexico City. I work for Goldman Sachs doing financial reporting and analysis of the whole like markets, especially like derivatives. That's kind of my the section that I cover. And yeah, I enjoy numbers. So yeah.
Well, we will deal with more than 1 or 2 of them, I promise. Yeah. Chris, or do you prefer Christopher?
I'm fine with either.
What do you prefer? What are your friends call you when they're being polite?
They call me everything.
Oh, yeah, okay.
My last name, my Chris, so. Really.
Man down. Man down.
Okay,
Yeah, so the name's Christopher. I'm from Norway. That's where I got my bachelor's degree, and I started my MBA here last August. Joined the ski team. I'm not on the ski team anymore.
So are you one of these guys in the local Norwegian mafia with Sievert and Nickel and Oscar and those guys? Are they friends of yours?
No, I'm kind of a little. I know all the like people very well.
I don't know that bodes well for you, by the way.
Huh?
Actually, I have a lot of respect for those guys.
Yeah.
Did you know Nikolai?
Yeah, I know him. Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody that's been in the same country with Nikolai knows him, because Nikolai makes his presence known. Okay.
But yeah, I think I had class with everyone.
Okay.
I think.
Okay, thank you. How do I pronounce it? Is it Mazen, Mazen?
It's Mazen.
Mazen, okay, that wasn't one I came up with. Thank you.
It was going to be your third option, I know.
Pardon me?
It was going to be your third option.
It was my third option, you just didn't let me get to it, right?
I know.
Yeah, okay.
My background is mostly scientific. So I have bachelor's in chemistry and then biochemistry master's.
Smart guy.
So I work in the pharmaceutical industry, and I'm an MBA program, so it's part of it. But actually, honestly, my company has went through 5 acquisitions in the last 4 years.
Yeah,
So I'd love to know more about those numbers, especially that my bonus right now is dependent on them.
yes.
So I think it'd be really interesting. To
Yeah,
know more about
you
it.
will be interested in some we go through them, in fact, a lot beyond just the numbers. Cool. Jenyun? Yep. Okay, I can't have pronounced it right.
Doesn't matter.
Oh, sure it does. How do you pronounce it? What do you like to be called?
Jongyun?
Jenyun?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna
It's
try to
easy
get
for
it,
you.
you keep correcting me anytime you need to, okay? All right.
So I'm an international student from China, and I graduated from the U of U in marketing, and this is my last semester of graduating. So excited.
Yeah, good point, right?
Yeah, and I was working for an international fabric company with marketing analysis. So, yeah,
Okay, thank you. Where in China?
East Coast. It's a city called Nanking.
Okay, sure, of course. Okay, very good. Kato?
Oh, yeah. Sure, a lot of people know me, yeah, we have.
Oh,
a lot
do
of-
they already know you? They know your
Yeah,
shtick?
Somewise, more than I think 70% of people know me, so
Okay.
yeah, I'm Kaibo, so I'm from China too. It's northwest part. And I just coming back from China, last week. Already, it's 2 days ago, So it's just to go back for my wedding, and this time I just go back and create my own company. It's another one company, not a restaurant, it's so this is I think it's my third semester, I like finance class,
Cool.
Yeah, it's very good. So it's hard, but it's cool, It's kind of like that. I graduated from the University of Utah, for the business administration. This is my third degree, so yeah.
Very good. Kaibo and Kuhn and I had a class together last night, and I don't think either of them had been back off the jet for more than about 10 or 12 hours. Poor Kuhn was having a terrible time staying awake. But Kaibo, I think he was popping amphetamines or something. 'Cause he had drank there the whole time, man. It wasn't even Diet Dr. Pepper, which is my drug of choice, okay? So, very
Yeah,
good.
my first drink is Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, well, of course. Let's get real. Okay. Vida.
I think I've had classes with all you guys. There's a few here that I don't know. I work for Northrop Grumman. I work with materials and inventory. Thought it would be a good class to take because I work with a lot of suppliers, and I think lately we've had a lot of suppliers that surprise us, telling us that they're selling the business or they're shutting down. I'll give you something useful as far as being able to predict supplier performance and deciding whether or not they're going to be around for us to fill out a survey 3 to 5 year contract of supplying us with
Yeah,
materials.
very good. Very good. Manny.
Yeah.
Do they all know you?
I think most of them I've
everybody
been in
knows.
class with. I think Colin, he works with me, so, yeah. I work in admissions, I've been here for about 12 years in admissions, so.
So Mike Keene and I are getting ready to take a group of students to Milan and Rome. And Mike was telling me recently about the last time he and his wife were in Rome. And they had gone to St. Peter's Square, they were looking up the papal balcony. Somebody had stepped out onto the balcony, they were getting ready for the Pope to step out. And they overheard a couple of tourists from somewhere else standing next to them. As the Pope steps out, the husband in that tourist couple said, "Well, who is that guy that just stepped out?" And his wife said, "Well, I don't know, but the guy standing next to him is Manny De La Cruz." No, Villalobos, not De La Cruz. Ah, I killed the punchline. Got it. Okay. Everybody knows Manny.
Yeah.
And the rest of that was a lie, by the way. Okay. Colin.
Colin had classes, most of everyone in here, working graduate admissions for the nursing school.
Ken.
Basically the same thing. I don't know a few, three people. I think I don't know.
Okay, you'll get to know him.
Yeah, I got to know them.
Okay.
My background in finance as well. I listening to my friends. I'm intimidated by taking class from you though.
Okay, we'll talk about that.
We talk about
Here's one of the things. Ken will say almost nothing in class. He rarely will speak up, and he always knows what's going on. So when you put together
I don't know
study
what that
groups,
means.
when you put together study groups, you want the professor in your study group. Okay? Robert.
I don't know what according to
I do, man. I hear the stories.
So my background, I did an undergrad in exercise science, and I now work in mortgages, manage the company there. I'm about halfway done, so
Cool.
a while to go.
Very good. Elisa?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've had class with most of everyone in here.
Okay.
I work for a company called Progression where I'm a content marketing specialist. So I'm a writer. I don't do numbers, and I'm scared of them.
Well, that'll change.
I'm very scared of
No,
numbers.
it's a language. Numbers and math are simply a language. Tell you a story in a few minutes about it. You'll be fine, I promise. Kuhn.
I'm going from China. I graduated here as aviation management student, and I fly stateside with cargo, so cause of time difference, I'm still very tired. Sorry.
Yeah.
The more interesting thing is, due to Seattle, I know I have the same air with him.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so I'm gonna give you guys a tiny bit of a pass tonight, because I know you're still a little bit jet lagged, but only a tiny bit of a pass. By the way, something I do when I see a student start to nod off, which I did a lot when I did my master's program in economics, because I worked on my master's in the last couple of years that I owned my firms. And I always worked a good 60 or 70 hours a week, and so I did my master's on top of that. And so in the evenings, I'd be sitting in classes with you, and I'd start nodding off. And I learned very quickly that if somebody said my name, immediately the adrenaline pushed, I was at attention. So if you're starting to nod off, I'm going to try to remember just to say your name in my sentence. Doesn't mean I'm calling on you. I don't expect you to respond. I'm just trying to push a little adrenaline and get you back. And if you need to stand up, go to the back of the room or something, walk around, do it. Okay, we'll take a break about halfway through this deal. But so I just hope to not use the same name over and over and over and over again. When it's a pattern, I will remember it. Shelby.
So I'm just gonna guess what we're going on here. Probably 50% of the class.
Okay.
50% out. Got my undergrad in human biology. I currently work at St. Mark's in the surgery department. I'm getting an MBA because I want to go to dental school, and I'm hoping to get in next fall. So, an MBA, I have spoken to many health professionals, some which tried to start their own practice, some that have started their own practice, and it's difficult. People think they could just open one because they did good in medical school or dental school. But then they don't even know where to begin or how to keep themselves going without hiring more people. So I think the more I can know about business, the quicker I can start my own practice.
Smart. You know, I had, as you might expect, numerous physicians and healthcare providers as clients in my investment firms over the years. And you could so easily differentiate them. I mean, they all had more than a couple of dollars, otherwise we wouldn't have been talking, right? But those that had significant resources understood business. And those that had limited resources but still wanted to do something simply didn't. They may be great doctors, but they just didn't. We could be talking about a doctor or an engineer or a restaurant owner or anybody, right? If you don't understand the fundamentals of the business that you're in, that you maybe even own and have the responsibility to run, then you're subject to a whole bunch of stuff that is just going to buffet you around right and left, and you're going to feel like you're beat up at the end of every day. You'll still feel that way sometimes when you do understand, because you know what to be afraid of, right? But it's better to know than to be ignorant. Ignorance doesn't pay dividends. It just doesn't. So good for you. Good for you. Okay. What have you guys heard about this class?
Intensive.
Okay, intensive. What else?
Intensive.
Okay.
Special work on the weekends in the group.
Prepare to work your butt off.
I'm going to be honest with you. Purposely, this class is not for the faint of heart. Okay, that's all there is to it. I'm not going to apologize. I will, however, see to it that you have every resource you possibly need to succeed in the class. And I think even the students that come into our class with very limited numeric understanding and that are the most concerned about it, most of those students come away with some pretty good grades. It's interesting, the ones that don't do very well are the ones that think they already know. Okay? Kiss of death. Because if you know a lot about finance, you know a lot about accounting, it doesn't mean you know a lot about the path that we're about to trod together. Because we're gonna realize that the rules of finance, certainly the rules of accounting, are all set in stone, right? I mean, generally accepted accounting principles, you know, invested capital means this, fixed assets are that, etc. And they're set in stone, except for when they're not. And it's the when they're not part. And understanding when they're not and what that means and how to deal with them, that's what's going to pay you big dividends. I'm going to make a guess, and you don't have to tell me if I'm wrong or right. My guess is maybe one or two of you in the room have a six-figure income. And everybody else would like one, and those of you that have it would like a bigger one. Am I probably right? Or are you sitting here just because you thought it was a great idea on a Thursday night? In which case you're just wrong. So you want more. But one of the things you're about to find out, if you don't already realize this, is a monkey and an iPad can do almost all the quantitative work that you already know how to do and that you're about to learn how to do. It's just programmatic. It is just formulaic. Monkeys and iPads, you might know, don't earn multiple six-figure incomes or even singular six-figure incomes. So given that they can do what you're about to learn to do and a lot of what you already have learned, how is it that you're going to have that kind of a career, future, and income? What's going to differentiate you?
I believe you have to understand, because anybody can just do like Excel, right? Anybody can just go ahead and plug the formulas, drag the formulas, that's it. But when it comes to explaining it and see, you know, you have like the market movements and how that affects this and that, that's what, you know, that's what you get paid for.
How many of you would say that you naturally are inclined to numbers and you're just super comfortable with them? Oh, seriously? Okay, so the alternate state, so this is a binary state, how many of you would say that you're naturally inclined to storytelling and that you're fairly comfortable with it? And do the rest of you just not exist? Okay, all right, Shelby, now I know you exist. In fact, I already know you exist. You have a big, bold personality. Do you know that? I've heard about you.
Oh.
Uh-huh. Okay. So here's the thing. Numbers are extraordinary. Numbers are necessary. Numbers without the ability to interpret them, tell the story of that which they represent, help others understand the power of the utility of them, are impotent. They're meaningless. They will get you nowhere. I'm going to introduce you to a guy by the name of Aswath Damodaran. Not in person. I'm going to do it by video. Professor Damodaran is the Kirshner Chair at New York University Stearns, NYU Stern School of Business. He's the modern guru of finance and asset valuation modeling. The guy has it going on. I'm gonna have an assignment that you guys will finish up over this next week with looking at a video or two of his and doing a really short quiz. Okay.
What does videos like?
The video is about an hour. Yeah, each of the two videos are about an hour. You only need to watch one of them because they're almost identical. Okay, almost.
Word for word.
No, not actually not
kind
word
of.
for word. He's got some
The
different
stories.
stories, but they're really very similar. And I say that because you can take the quiz having watched either video and have an equal chance of doing well on the quiz. Quiz is almost a throwaway. The only reason I have the quiz and the assignment is to motivate you to actually watch the video, because I learned over a few years that just begging you to watch the video didn't get the job done. I had to put something with teeth in back of it, okay? I had an opportunity to spend some time, a couple of times this summer with Demoter in New York. The first time I went there expressly for the purpose of having breakfast with the guy, just to pick his brain on something that had been plaguing me, okay? And you'll learn what that is as we go through the course. You'll learn why. But what it is the notion of G, which is a variable for growth, and it has a whole lot of dynamic to it. And I went back some weeks later and worked with he and another person on a small project, and I did it again just to learn, because the guy knows his stuff and he knows stuff I want to know better. Okay. My knowledge of what we're going to be talking about is predominantly applied and practical. I didn't get a PhD in finance. I had a career in finance and I have a doctorate in economics. So I've, for a number of years, been trying to close that gap, right? And as it turns out, I think that the applied and practical part probably is more valuable than the academic-y part. I respect the academic-y. I respect the theoretical. You're going to find that I will talk a lot in abstractions, and I will give assignments in practicals and applieds, so that the complementarity of those two hopefully will give a rounder picture for you, rounder tool set that's got more value to you. Okay? So intense. What else have you heard about this class?
A lot of work.
You were sitting at a table where my friend Jameson was just skewering me. And I could tell that the second I walked in the building an hour or two ago. There is a fair amount of work. However, you are each other's best resource. That and some website that I've got for you, right? I will beg you, implore you, plead with you to form informal study groups. You don't have to as a function of the class. There's no great dependency on being in a study group. But here's one of the things that I promise you. Chris one day is going to be looking at a problem set that we've given that's due on next Thursday at 6 o'clock. And he's going to be working on it. And he's got the solution set, by the way, because I have all the solutions to the problems linked right next to the link with the problem on Canvas. And he knows enough to not simply copy everything down because there's going to be a test at some point. He actually would like to pass it. Okay? So he knows enough not to do that. So he's working through this, and he sees I've given an answer, and for the life of him, he can't figure out how I got that answer. He knows the equational structure, in part because he got his notes and a whole bunch of stuff from me. He knows the equational structure, but he just can't get the answer. And he's hitting his head against the wall. And Kaibo walks in, sees what he's doing, and says, "Oh, Chris, it's that. It's this little tiny little thing that you just overlooked." Because there's about 1,000 of them, okay? If you work in study groups, you don't have to wait for Kaibo to come along. You guys are already there together. And when Robert is scratching his head over something, Manny's going to say, "Oh, no, I think it's this. Do you remember?" And everybody says, "Oh, of course it is." And you move along. So I'm going to implore you to do that. I'm going to ask you to use something referred to as WhatsApp. How many of you use WhatsApp? Okay, about half of us. I dig WhatsApp. For those of you that don't know it, it's essentially a texting system with some good construction to it and a little bit of steroidy kind of things going on. So we're creating one for the class. I already created the group and invited Colin to it. And I'll be able to then, once Colin is accepted, I'll be able to then invite the rest of you to it. Okay? I just did it less than an hour ago, Colin.
Okay.
You wouldn't have seen it yet.
Okay.
Here's how we're going to use this. When you have a question you want to ask me or any of the rest of us, don't do it by email. I mean, unless it's personal, private, okay? Go to your WhatsApp app on your phone, tablet, whatever you got.
Because what side is said it's a summer class now.
Yeah, a link was sent out to you that was incorrect. And I apologize. I realized that as I was putting the thing together and put Colin into it earlier. So if you went into that WhatsApp group, well, good for you. It's not going to do anything for you, and I'm going to invite you to a different one. I apologize for that. But you're gonna have a question at some point, and you're going to want to ask me. But at that some point, it's going to be like 11 o'clock on a Friday night, and I rarely answer the phone at 11 o'clock on a Friday night. Although if any of you know Sam Hernandez, he'll tell you that I did. I told his wife that I did. As they were having dinner the next night, we happened to run into him, okay? And his wife said, "That's who you were calling last night?" And she literally smacked him. Okay? So, but I answered the phone and dealt with his question. But I rarely do that. Or a Sunday afternoon, you're going to be working on something, and you know I'm going to get back to you because I always get back. But I'm not going to get back to you right like that. So you have this question, you pull up your WhatsApp, and all of a sudden you realize Sophia asked the same question 7 hours ago, and I already typed in the answer. And so it's been answered for you. Or you ask the question, and somebody else sees the question, Tavita sees the question, realizes I'm probably not going to get to this until tomorrow, and he answers it because he happens to remember the thing. Okay? WhatsApp is extremely powerful for this, letting us kind of have some academic community, if you will, to help each other. It saves me time, it saves you time, and it saves a lot of frustration. It is also a mechanism that I will use when I need to push some information out to you quickly, and I think, oh, I forgot to tell them this, or we need to change a date on that, or something of that sort, okay? So I'll get something out to you maybe later tonight, or probably tomorrow morning after I've got Colin's deal, and we'll get that all put together. But I'm going to beg you to be working study groups. It will save you untold hours of frustration, toil, and torment, I promise. Okay? This class is not quantitatively hard. This class doesn't use the higher order functions of Excel, although it uses some pretty interesting Excel functions as we create models. This class uses an HP 10B calculator and some of its very garden variety time value of money functions. What makes this class a little bit intense is I'm trying to deliver a lot to you. And there are thousands of little details. And the rules of finance are all set in stone, except for when they're not. Okay? I know Lisa's sitting there, and she's saying, man, if I leave now, I either got to hurdle the desk, I got to get past Kuhn and Shelby. I don't know how I can do this without making a scene. Just don't go, you're going to be fine. I promise. Finally then, I dig this stuff. If that's not obvious to you already, or if you don't already know me, no, I dig this stuff, okay? I'm here probably a good 60 hours a week, maybe more. And when I'm here, my door is almost always open, and you're always welcome to come in, okay? I'm more than happy to respond to you by text, email, etc. I'll spend an hour or so with you whenever we need to help you get through a concept. Don't hesitate to access me. I want you to come away from this knowing some things you don't already know now and being extremely confident that you've developed a relationship and a resource that you can call on anytime. Fair enough? Okay. And I'm dead serious about it. Those of you that know me know I'm dead serious about it. Okay? All right. So let's do some other things. We have a syllabus and Canvas to take a look at. Let me start to pull up Canvas here. And I'll walk through the syllabus and then we'll look at Canvas. By the way, most every night we'll go at least until 9 o'clock and maybe all the way to 9:20-ish, okay? Most every night. I hope that's not bad news to you. It is what it is.
With no breaks, is that what you're saying?
Oh, we'll take a break. Oh yeah, we'll take a break. But we're also all adults. If you need to take a break outside of the the time frame in which I offer one, stand up, go do what you got to do, and come back. Okay? We're all adults in this deal. To that end, because we're going to use WhatsApp, I fully expect you to have your phones on you. okay? And every once in a while, you might need to pick them up, kind of like Kaibo's doing now, as he's texting his girlfriend, okay? So when I see you on your phone, I probably will call you home, okay? You're gonna have your laptops. I would bring it every night, or the tablets you do Excel on, whichever one. You're gonna be working on those from time to time in class, like almost every night. We're gonna do some work on that. I'm just gonna ask that we all respect each other, and that you spend time on your electronic device complementary to what we're doing in the class right then. And if you're wasting your time, you're wasting my time, and that will chap my hide, and I administer grades. There's a direct correlation and connection. Okay? Hey, I'm not at all ashamed to put it out. You and or somebody else is paying more than $1 or $2 for you to be here, right? I absolutely will do everything I can to see to it that we've enhanced the value of that, including, if necessary, calling you on the phone. I will never seek to embarrass you. This is a class in which you can raise your hand, give a wrong answer, and end up learning because of the process, okay? It's a class in which you can ask something that maybe somebody else wouldn't think is all that relevant, and I will do everything I can to help it be relevant, okay? Take risks in this class. Okay, let's look at the syllabus real quick. It shows my office hours, Thursday, 4:30 to 5:30. My office hours are pretty much whenever you get a hold of me, whenever you need me, okay? So don't restrict yourself like that. But I do try to keep 4:30 to 5:30 on a Thursday where I'm in my office and I haven't scheduled anything else, just in case you all drop it in. There's some stuff on the front there, won't surprise you. There's no text for this course, although I would highly recommend those of you that are interested in this material and think it might be valuable to pick up a copy of one of the McKinsey texts called Valuation, the 5th edition, and I'll try to bring one back from my office after the break. I meant to bring one as we came in. The 5th edition is about that thick. It's paperback. You can go out there and find it for about $25 or $30 in decent shape. There's a newer edition that's only about that thick and is ironically 3 times the price. Half the size, 3 times the price. It's new, okay? I don't know what's new about it, but I think what's new about it is the checks the authors get to deposit. I think that's what's new about it, okay? You don't need either of those. I've prepared all the material for you. I haven't just copied it from those or any other sources. I've prepared material for you, and you'll see some of that in a little bit. But I think those are really interesting texts and can give you some good backup. The HP calculator, how many of you already have one of these? An HP 10B? Cool. So as we go to break, those of you that do not have one, feel free to come get one, okay? They're for you, and you don't have to give them back. I'm going to ask those of you that do have them to respect that I paid for these and not make me pay for some you already have.
Oh, you mean right now or just for the future?
Well, I mean period. How many of you own one? I don't mean that you necessarily have it on you at the moment. How many of you own one? Okay, but you're going to need to use one. You're not going to need it tonight, but you're going to need one. And for a long time, I allowed students to either use that, and this is the calculator that is kind of designed into the Gore School of Business's academic programs. But a lot of students say, well, I've got this cool TI financial calculator and such. And I say, well, I can't really support some of the keystrokes on that. I don't know them, but I do know this. And I got to a point where I finally said, enough of that malarkey. I'm going to give you one of these. So I'm going to teach you how to use it too, okay? Or at least teach you some, and you'll teach yourself the rest of it. So at the end of, when we go to break, if you don't own one of these, come get it. If you do own one, respect it. I'd rather not buy you a second one, if that's okay. Oh, you'll see course overviews, course objectives. You'll see grading schemes, which might be important. I reserve 10% of the grade, so a full grade point in this class for participation. That's good and bad. Some of you don't want to talk up. Some of you, and I'm not trying to stereotype here, but especially those of you for whom English is not your first language, tend to not want to speak up in class. Please speak up. I learned last night that Kaibo, who probably does speak up in class as it turns out, but who just got back from China, is a wealth of information on some things that I would never have known. I don't know if Jinyun is as well. I think Kuhn might be, and I don't know who is and who isn't, but speak up, ask questions, engage. Students that engage learn a tremendous amount more, and they retain it compared to students who do not, okay? We're going to do a series of homework assignments. And a homework assignment is on Canvas. It is digital, okay? They're already all up there for you. Do not go into the homework assignment until you feel as though you've done well enough in the practice homework so that you can then go into the homework and ace the thing. So I give you a practice homework assignment, and you can go through that practice homework assignment as many times as you want, and it'll give you a score each time, it'll give you some differences in the questions each time, so that you can maybe master some of this. Again, do this together in your study groups, right? And then open up the homework assignment. It's timed. It's got like 3 hours, but it's timed. You have one shot at it. It's kind of a test, right? But you got all kinds of material to prepare you for. They're not hard tests, they're detailed tests. Some of them harder than others. They're worth 25% of your grade. Okay? The practice homeworks are worth 0 because they don't score you, they don't impede you, they don't disadvantage you. We're going to work on a series of what I call in-class problems. We'll start the first one tonight. And in-class problems is a little bit of a misnomer. We'll start them in class, but we almost never will finish them in class. In fact, I don't think we ever will finish them in class. Sometimes we'll only barely introduce them, start them, and then they're due the next week. Okay? Sometimes they're due digitally, so uploading in Canvas. Sometimes they're due by paper, and you'll see in the assignments in Canvas which is which. I would always do the problem set together in one of my study group. I'd give a shot at it before then, and then in the study group I'd go and I'd work it out, and then I'd do the practice homeworks, and then I would actually tackle the homework. That's the cycle or sequence I would do these in to get the best grade on the homework, and they are not coincidentally designed to build on and be complementary to each other. Okay, I've set them up that way. There's going to be an assessment. Assessment is a schmancy term for test. It's going to be one of the last nights of class. Maybe it is the last night of class. And it actually counts. It's only 10% of your grade, but it counts. And it's an assessment on which you're going to be using the calculator, and you're going to be doing a lot of what we do by hand rather than by spreadsheet. You're going to learn to do a lot of this by spreadsheet, but I need you to understand what you're doing in the spreadsheet. I need you to be powerful enough to recreate the spreadsheet, modify it, mold it for your own purposes, and if you don't understand the math underlying the formulas, you're screwed. Okay? And that's not your goal or mine. So this assessment's not nothing. If you bomb it, it's 10%. It's not, you're not going to fail the class. However, if you respect it, put the time into it, it's going to amp your grade. Okay. And then there's an essay at the end of the course. And the essay is prescribed on Canvas already. If I were you, I would read the requirements for it, and I would start thinking about it, and I would think about it every time we're in class together, because what's happening is I'm writing the essay for you as I talk to you. Okay? The essay, you're all going to write the same one. It's called How Do Firms Value Assets? And you're going to see that we will be talking about multiple metrics and ways that firms use, or investors for that matter, to value an asset. And an asset in this context is probably a complex asset like a firm. Okay? Probably not a publicly held firm. Because do we have to go out and value a publicly held firm? The market's kind of done it for us. Maybe we can use valuation metrics to determine whether or not it's over or undervalued, right? So we can decide whether or not we want to get into it or not. But the market at any moment in time has given us a value of the company, right? But we're going to test that notion, and we're going to identify when a company shows up in the market's worth X, what that means to other variables like G and R and such that you may or may not understand yet, but you will, that are inherent in getting to the number X. We can reverse engineer equations, right? Okay. So that's the grading structure, and that's some of the assignments. By the way, the essay, I've got to do the very last possible date that I can that still gives me enough time to grade it and give you a grade by the time grades are due. Okay? So I pushed it as far as I'm allowed to. You'll find that there's a very well laid out rubric for the score you'll get in the essay. One of the rubric items is a good example for us to look at. It's the word count. I require no less than 1,500 words on the essay. You'll find that if you give me exactly 1,500 words, so you met the minimum requirement, then you'll get 70% of the score for that part of the assignment. There's other elements that are different as well, right? So I don't know really how you can do a good job on this essay in less than about 2,000 words. I just don't. If you go much over about 4,000, you better have a really, really good reason. Impress me or I will have an attitude about your sainted mother. Okay? Because I'm going to read all these, except for Tavitas. He scares me. He just kind of stares me down. He's big. And he does it on purpose too, you can tell. Yeah. So there's no reason to just ramble on kind of like I do all the time.
This is all individual, right?
Yeah, all individual, yes, yeah. That said, I'm going to show you some resources in a few minutes. You guys have a ton of material to draw from. This is not a research paper where you're doing APA style footnotes or references or citations. Anything that came from the class you do not need to cite. Okay? If you went out and found it somewhere else, A, make sure that it is aligned with what we've done in class, because there's a lot out there that's not. And B, cite it so I know where it came from. Okay? But if it came from the class or anything that I've given you on Canvas, you don't need to cite that. It's just a part of the class.
Even if it's an essay or something, or some cited work on
Yeah,
online. we don't
even
have
if,
to- Okay.
I mean, you're welcome to cite it if you'd like to, Robert, you just don't need to. I'm not looking at for your ability to technically construct a publishable article. Now, I do want it to be a good essay. A good essay has a good introduction where you tell me what you're going to tell me, right? Then it's got some sections, paragraphs, pages, where you tell me all the functional stuff. And then it's got a nice, robust conclusion. More students lose more points by giving me some wimpy little noodly arm conclusion, okay? They've given me this great 2,000-word masterpiece and then a 2-sentence conclusion that one of my 8-year-old grandchildren would be able to articulate, okay? I'm not looking for that because it's in the conclusion that you help me understand whether or not you can put these concepts together, that you understand the connective tissue, and where you impress me with your ability to interpret and be artists. One of the resources I'm going to show you in a few minutes has a full article that I wrote called Artistry and Interpretation. I would read that. The Motorin in the video is going to talk to you about artistry and interpretation. He doesn't use those words, but that's what he's doing. So that's important to us, okay? Oh, and there's a whole bunch of, you can expect this from me, I will expect this from you, here are your rights under federal law, and that is the source. Any question about that stuff? Yeah.
About that, I see. So one, I would use a single or double space.
I don't care.
Oh, it's the
Because
words.
word count is, I don't care about the page length, I give you a word count. Yep. Good question though. We're going to bring up Canvas real quick. And then we're going to get into some of my favorite stuff. So how many of you have done your international trip? Okay? And I know that Cabo and Kuhn, you guys are going to Italy with Mike Keene and I. Anybody else in here going to Italy with us?
When is that happening?
October.
I'll go with you if you like.
You know, as long as you're willing to pay, brother. I'm all over it.
He's got cash, so
Yes.
stuff in his boots.
How many of you are kind of lining up to go to Asia in March? Okay. We're going to have a good time. So Mike Keene and I will also be doing that trip. He and I were in South Korea and Macau and Hong Kong and China together a year ago in March. Had a really interesting experience. One of the things that we experienced was totally unexpected. You might know that the South Korean President Park, which is, I think, a last name, but it comes first in Korean, if I remember correctly. And there's been a whole line of President Parks, okay? The South Korean President Park was unfortunately, well, unfortunate for her, impeached. A year ago, 2 years ago, November, I think it was, something like that. She was impeached. And their impeachment process is different than ours. It's their legislative body that begins the impeachment, but once they voted for impeachment, it goes to their judiciary, their version of the Supreme Court, and that's where it's ratified or not. And that's about a 6-month process in between A and B. And we happened to be there in Seoul when they were preparing for the Supreme Court to make their announcement. And this was not a little deal. They've been having protests in the streets for months. Every day about 100,000 people would show up in downtown Seoul. And Seoul's a big place, like 12 million-ish people, but even still 100,000 people is a lot of people, right? But interesting, they came on time, They left on time, they cleaned up after themselves, no looting, no rioting, no violence at all. It was a whole different way of protesting compared to what our society has had protesting devolve to, right? But we happened to be at the Standard Chartered Bank, which is a big multinational bank, and at the Korea Times, which is the largest English newspaper in all of Asia. We happened to be in the Korea Times office when the announcement was made. And the president of the newspaper was talking to us. He stopped, something came up on his screen, he told us. Very quickly thereafter, there were additional security people with us. And they expected there were going to be about 200,000 people in the streets. By the time we left the Korea Times, there weren't 200,000 people in the streets. There were over 1 million. And I don't care what the city is, you put 1 million people downtown that don't belong there all the time, that's hot, right? And CNN, Fox, etc. from around the globe are reporting this, reporting about the violence, people that are being killed by the protesters and such, so we have all kinds of security. Well, as it turns out, they came on time, they left on time, they cleaned up after each other, they were peaceful, they were saying their piece, but anytime you put 1 million people together, 2 of them are morons, fatally, okay? So Sophia, here's the thing. If you're in a protest, there's a great big police van, right, a big bussy kind of van. It's got these stands on top of it that are bolted on with speakers. If you get up on top of the van and are insistent on breaking that loose and throwing it over, let go before it goes over. Because one of the guys that died didn't have the smarts to let go. He hadn't been through your MBA program. Didn't have the smarts to let go, and so he went over with it, fell on his head, and he died. Okay, the other one, if you're 80 years old plus, overweight, have a heart problem, don't go to the protest. Because you might have a heart attack as you're stepping off the bus.
Oh.
That was the other one that died. It was a fascinating experience. Front page of the newspaper the next day was all about that. Inside second page was this great big photograph, literally about like this, and an article about our MBA visit to the Korea Times. It was cool. I'll try to remember to bring it in. So those of you that are going to Korea and China and Hong Kong with Professor Keen and I, we're going to have a great experience. We ate jellyfish and camel tendons. Not on purpose and never again.
Yeah, do not try it.
Yeah, you know, it wasn't all that bad.
I don't know.
But it wasn't all that good either, buddy.
No.
Well, at least you didn't eat a dog.
We didn't eat dog because often we asked. Right? Okay, all right. Let's look at Canvas. So I know you can't see a lot of the detailing in this. This is going to be kind of a higher order overview, if you will. I have the Canvas modules set up by week. Okay? Week 1, week 2, all the way through this deal. All right? I'll just look at week 1 real quickly with you. So here for week 1, you see the first item is the syllabus. Then you'll see you got something in here about what's after, which I obviously need to update. The next one is this in-class problem that I'll assign and go through a little bit of tonight. Only do questions A through G of this. There is also questions H through M that I will not have prepared you to do by the time we're done tonight. Only do A through G. Next week, you'll do H through M, okay, of the same problem set. And you'll find my problem sets are all very similarly structured. Now, when I introduce it to you, you'll see how that is. The demoter and video and quiz that I referenced are right here. If you open that up, you'll see that this is due before we come next week. Why did we do? Let's see. Yeah, so before class next week, it's about an hour. It's interesting. It's not dry and dull like a finance professor is. The guy's got it going on. It's interesting. He's going to be talking about some firms you know. He's going to be talking about some fairly controversial valuations and whether things are worth what they're priced at in markets. But listen to him. Listen to his discussion about understanding numbers versus understanding stories. And if you're good at numbers, then purposely go out and try to become good at telling a story. If you're good at telling stories like most of you guys think you are, then purposely go out and get good at the numbers. Okay? Never focus on or specialize in something you're already good at, because you're going to be good at that anyway. Get good at something else. That's what's going to make you valuable, right? Be a double-pronged threat. I introduced the essay to you here, some course introduction material, all this is linking you to stuff. And you're going to find on each one of these that you're linked to quick sheets. And there's a separate quick sheet each time. I'm going to give you a paper copy of tonight's quick sheet. They're kind of like little crib sheets with equations and formulas on them. There's not a lot of text and not a lot of fluff. It's just very condensed stuff. You're going to find some Excel templates in this. Giving you Professor DeMotorin's YouTube channel because the guy's prolific. He's got all kinds of stuff out there. And I've linked you then to 2 versions of something called Value, the 4 Cornerstones of Corporate Finance. And if you were to look at that McKinsey textbook, it's called Valuation. And the first 6 chapters are the 4 cornerstones of corporate finance. Okay? One of these is a video on YouTube that you can that you watch. I don't know how long it is. It's not 20 minutes. It's an hour plus. I think it's like an hour and a half. And it's one of the authors talking about this. Okay, what the 4 cornerstones are. How many of you have an Audible account? A couple of you. I have an Audible account. I drive about half an hour each direction, going from home back and forth. And so I listen to books, and I go through 2 or 3 books a month. If you don't have an Audible account, you can create a free one. And your first download is free, and you can download the first 4 or 8 chapters, whatever it is, of that text and listen to it. It's eminently hearable. You don't need to see graphs, charts, equations. You can listen to the guy talk about these things. If I were you, I would do that. If you don't want to keep the account, you don't want to subscribe and pay for it, you don't have to. The first download is a freebie. Okay? And I would make that this 4 cornerstones of corporate finance. So I'm giving you those links. Okay? I believe that what you see in Canvas lines up well with what you see on the schedule in the syllabus. If it doesn't, please tell me that because I overlooked something. Okay? And I have linked this every which way but Sunday. Let me show you something here. Let me see if this pulls up what I want to go to. So I just clicked on the Utah or the U.S. Corporate Federal Income Tax Calculator. It opened it up, something else I had to click on, and then it gave us a spreadsheet. Some of these are going to give you spreadsheets and some templates. You're going to find that I've got a website out here that I'll introduce you to that has a whole bunch of Excel templates on it. You can use them. They're there for you to use. But if you start to use a template and you don't understand what it's doing, then the outcome you're going to get may not be what you're looking for. Okay? So make sure that as you use templates, that you dig into them and you see what they're doing. Otherwise, they're going to give you spurious results, and that might cost you. It may confuse you. It may lead you to a false understanding, etc. Okay? This particular one is one that I developed a few years ago, and you'll see that it's got corporate income tax rates, federal corporate income tax rates for pre-2018, and then 2018 and beyond in another tab. Because we enacted a 2018 Tax Act that changed the game for corporate income taxes. Corporate income taxes at the federal level now are flat 21%. Before that, there was a range of percentages. So there's going to be times when you come up with an income number of some type, and you're going to have to think about how much tax might be charged on that income if tax were going to be charged on that income. And you're going to be looking around and saying, gosh, where does he give me the rate? Where does he tell me? I give it to you right here. Use the tool. Go into this field here, excuse me. Go to this field right here and put in whatever income number. Whoops, you have to let me edit. Put in whatever income number you're dealing with. Let's say it's $250,000. Enter. And it'll not only tell you how much tax, but what the average rate is and everything. Okay. So, and I've got that set up for you for pre-2018, and some of the problem sets you're going to deal with are purposely dated before 2018. And some are going to be after 2018 or including 2018. You might be curious as to why I want you to think about or become at least a little bit familiar with the pre-2018 tax numbers. I have little confidence that the current Tax Act and the way that the corporate income tax is structured is going to stay that way. I think it would be cool, but I think there's a fairly good chance that Mr. Trump in the next election may not prevail. There's enough to swell against that, and I'm pretty confident that if he does not, whoever comes in back of him will change some things again, and I want you to have both. Okay? Is that enough stuff for one night? Are we done? Not a snowflake's chancing Moab. Not even close. Okay, let me take you to a couple other sites real quickly. You might want to write these down. So there's a site out there that's got just a horrible name. It is www.richardhaskell.net. I know. I don't know who was mean enough to do that. Okay, on this site, when you go to it, that's my beautiful wife, by the way, whom I adore. You'll hear, I'll talk about my wife sometimes. I might even make a little bit of fun of her. My wife is Attila the quilter. Okay, she loves to quilt. But I adore my wife. Anyway, she's there because I prefer to look at her than anybody else. If you click on Excel templates, you're going to see a whole bunch of templates, most of which are going to be relevant to you. You click on any one of these, like the bond value calculator, and it's going to open up a, not surprising, Excel template. Make sure you understand how to use it before you start plugging numbers into this thing, or you're going to get spurious answers and get confused. Take you down the wrong path. But if you know how to use it, I'm going to introduce all of these things equationally, formulaically to you before you need to. If you know how to use it, they will save you a ton of time. Another one, I've got these links somewhere on Canvas, I didn't see them immediately, is equally as repugnant as this first one, is models.rhaskell.org. I know. But when you go to this one, you're going to see the CFA, and you're going to see some undergraduate students in a research project that we ran a couple of years ago during a May term. And then there's another companion site to this that is multiples.rhaskell.org. So the first one's models, this one's multiples. And when you look at this, you're going to see that I give you all kinds of information about asset valuation modeling. Man, a ton of material. I take you through models. I tell you what the inputs represent. I give you the equational structures. I take you to the input structure so you can know how to get to the inputs, how to get that far. I take you through and have you think about what does G represent, that kind of mystical growth thing that has caused me to lose more hair than anything else has. Well, my teenage daughters did most of that. And just a good discussion of the project and artistry and interpretation in finance. So this site has a tremendous amount of information for you. Okay? Hundreds of thousands of words in the combined site. So does the multiple site. They are very complementary, some of the same material, because both of them were research projects that focused on looking at the firms in the Dow 30 Industrials and the S&P 100 over a 17-year period, looking at their quarterly financials, and then taking all of that material and applying it all to asset valuation models and looking at the values we came up with and then comparing them against the market values and trying to get a sense of what some of those comparative differences meant. Okay? So those are some resources that I think you're going to want to use.
So what was the other website? The models.rhaskell?
And the other one is multiples. Yeah.
Could you just put the link on the camera?
It's on there. Let me show it to you here.
CV and what pages on the main one?
I thought it was the first one. It was a
Hang on.
in-class program.
Yeah, I've got them down here a little farther because you're not going to use them for a little bit. Yeah, so down here in week 3, you'll see where it says the valuation project. That is models.rhaskell.org. Okay, so the valuation project. And then in week 4, you see the multiples project. That is multiples.rhaskell.org. So the first one is here in week 3, right there. And the second one is here in week 4. And if one of you would be willing to send me an email saying, hey Rick, will you give us these links? I'll email you back later tonight with the links. Okay?
The first one has the links.
You got your, pardon?
The first website has the links to the other ones as well.
The first one has the links as well?
Yeah, the rhaskell.net.
Where?
On the CV and web pages. Oh, you're on Canvas. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm on Canvas.
Your first website has them all. So.
Yes, yeah. My websites are all interlinked. Okay? All right. We're going to take a break every night. I would prefer to go for a few minutes and then take a break about 7:30, or we can take one right now, and then after the break, we can dive into the financial stuff. You have a preference?
Keep it going.
Can we keep going? Is that what you're asking, Colin? Or can we go on a break?
No, let's keep going.
Okay, that's what I prefer. Okay, let's do it. Bring lights back up.
Gonna be my mentor. Gonna be my mentor.
I will not use PowerPoints hardly at all. I'm mostly going to be using the board. I'm going to be talking to you, okay? And literally everything that I talk to you about, every equation that I write, is already on Canvas for you, and you can find all of it.
I noticed online that you posted some YouTube videos of previous classes. Are you planning on doing the same thing?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
In fact, hopefully this is working. The ones we did in a couple other classes were for a student that had been injured during the semester and was able to attend class. And some of them cut off about halfway through because they weren't plugged in properly, the batteries died, that kind of thing. So I'm going to be doing that, and I will post tonight's video within 24 hours.
Okay.
And you can go through it again, or we can buy you a life, one of the two. But yes. Okay. Why value? Yes.
Oh, I got a quick question.
Sure,
So
please.
Looks like we have to use both financial calculators and Excel.
Yes.
To do most of the assignment, right?
Yes.
Okay, so does it matter use Microsoft Excel or?
Good question. No, it does not matter. However, when you are uploading a file for the homework, you must upload a Microsoft Excel file. So if you're using Google Sheets, you probably know you can convert it to a Microsoft Excel file. Upload that file. Don't give me a PDF. Don't give me a link to Google anything. Don't give me a link to anything on your website. It's kind of like I've given you a link. I want a live, actionable, where I can see what's going on in the equations, everything, MS Excel document from you. Okay? Yeah, but I don't care how it starts. You can, but as long as it ends like that.
I think the Mac systems Excel cannot use some
You
formula.
can. Yeah, in fact, the Mac version of spreadsheets, there's a function that will let you convert your spreadsheet to an MS Excel document for free. Okay, and you guys all have access to the Microsoft suite of products because you're students here. You can just download them for free. If you don't know how to do that, send me an email. I'll give you a link to do it. Okay. Yeah, when I'm asking for a Word doc, I mean an MS Word doc. Okay. I'm not asking for an Apple, fruity, googly kind of anything. I'm looking for an MS Word doc. If I want a Microsoft Excel document, that's what I want. I don't want something else. I need to be able to drill down and see what's going on inside of what you're doing. Good question. Okay. Okay, so why are we looking at asset valuation modeling? What's the relevance here? I talked about this a few minutes ago.
To see how a firm is using its assets and how
Say that one more time.
To see how a firm is using their assets and how valuable.
Okay, so, and I'm going to fine tune that just a little bit to kind of get a sense of how the decision makers, managers, stakeholders in the firm are using and or benefiting from changes in the value of the asset. Okay. So Manny's the CEO. Yay. He's got a contract that gives him $3 in annual income and a $10 million performance bonus if he hits certain metrics. Would you like to make the spread between the $3 to the 10 mil?
Yes.
I'm thinking so. I'm thinking that's going to make a difference in your lifestyle that day, okay? You know that the decisions you make that are carried out by your vice presidents, managers, production people, line workers are going to do what you want it to do or not. And you got to be able to measure them. You got to be able to model them. You got to think about, okay, here's my contract, here's my goal. How do I get there? And you get there either by performance through stock price, performance through value, performance through EBIT, performance through something, right? All of those are inherent in the models that we're going to talk about. And thinking about how you forecast and model that performance is inherent in what we're going to talk about. Okay? So why value? Value? because it is the lens through which we can examine the firm and see the effects of decisions made in the firm. Whether you're a healthcare worker, an artist, a CFO, a tech guy, or the chairman of the board, you're making decisions and they're affecting the value of that asset, and that affects the lives and livelihoods of the workers and the stakeholders. That's why we value value. Let's talk about stakeholders for a minute. When I say stakeholders, what do I mean?
Everyone has a stake in the company.
Okay.
Employees.
Okay. Now you're from Norway, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting. The Northern and Western European conceptualization of stakeholders is different than the American conceptualization of stakeholders. And I will tell you that it is more holistic, and I think it's more appropriate. It might, in the long run, be more profitable. I don't know that. Why? In the U.S. version of capitalism, we have fiduciary responsibilities, right? If I'm on the board of directors, or if I'm a senior officer manager in the firm, I've got a fiduciary responsibility to some of the stakeholders. Fiduciary means it's going to stand up in court, and if I don't do it, I can get fired, sued, etc. Okay? To whom is my fiduciary responsibility if I'm a CEO or on the board of directors of a company in the United States?
Shareholders.
Which ones? Common shareholders, preferred shareholders, Class A, Class B, bondholders, debt holders, which one?
All of them.
All of them. No, as it turns out, that's what you think, right, Tavita? That's the way it is in Norway, and there's even more than that. But in the U.S., there's a singular type of stakeholder for which we have a fiduciary responsibility, and it is the common equity shareholder. Common stock, period. Common stock. The common stock is, well, it's the most common type. It's the kind that is the garden variety type. Common stockholders have voting rights that they typically execute through people that are on the board, because they elect the board of directors, and the board of directors represents them. Okay? Common shareholders receive a dividend if the board of directors declares a dividend. And if the board of directors does not, they don't. There's no contract that says they get a dividend. In fact, the contract that governs common stock, all it says in lots and lots of legalese is you own an undivided proportional interest in this company. And if something goes haywire, you can't get sued if you're just a regular shareholder. Okay? So there's limited liability. Everything else is fair game. If I go and buy common stock in Mazen's company, I'm hoping to get a return on my investment, right, Mazen? But I'm praying that I get a return of my investment, right? Okay? But I'm hoping I get a return on it. But there's nothing that says I will. And if everything falls apart and the company goes bankrupt, employees get paid out first if their wages due. Some of the other suppliers that might have non-subordinate interests get paid out. Long-term debt holders, bondholders get paid out, then preferred shareholders get paid out, and the last guy standing is the common shareholder. Does that sound fair? Let me tell you why it's fair. Because if the employee works in a company and the company profits $10 gazillion this month, the employee still only gets their salary. Period. Locked in, it's limited. The debt holders, if you loan money to a company, you've got a contract that says how much you loaned, what the payment terms are, what the interest rate is, when you expect to get those payments, and remedies if you don't, right? So my company owes $1 million to Walter, we miss a payment, Walter and his buddy, the attorney, actually he's bringing Sophia with him. Okay? And Sophia comes in and says, Rick, by the way, thank you for defaulting, we now own your company. Because you defaulted, because that's what the bond contract, which is called a debenture, D-E-B, the bond contract says that. And a bond is only a specific type of debt, right? A bond is just a loan. It's an interest-only loan for a specified period of time that typically has a set rate of interest and is non-amortized, so it doesn't pay off principal. At the end of the time period, the whole thing's due. And you've got a calculation, many of you learned in MBA 603, and if you didn't, you're going to learn it here. There's a calculation that lets us go from the book value of that bond, which is always $1,000 a unit, to a market value. Okay? Well, the stakeholders. Bondholders, they know exactly what they're going to get. They're protected. They got a contract. Preferred shareholders, that's the next class, right? Preferred shareholders have no voting rights typically. It's very uncommon for preferred shareholders to have voting rights. Okay? Preferred shareholders contractually have a dividend that is a certain percentage of the original value or statement on the preferred stock. And preferred shareholders typically have the ability at a point in time or based upon some numeric realities to convert their preferred shares into common shares, in which case the world is their oyster or not, right? So the preferred shares also have a contract that's referred to as a prospectus, and if the firm defaults on the tenets of the contract, doesn't make the dividend payments on time, just like the bondholder, there are remedies, they can come in and they take over the company. So they've got some protection. So they're next on the list. The bottom of the list is the common shareholder. No protection, no limit to benefit. No limit. And they have voting rights. They have some influence. Whereas the other two, no voting rights, no influence. Well, in the U.S., the fiduciary responsibility is exclusively to the common stock shareholder. Not to the bondholders, not to the preferred shareholders, not to anybody that has warrants that have not been exercised into common stock yet, not to the customers, the employees, the suppliers, the society, the environment, none of those things. But if you go and put yes?
How about as a preferred shareholder?
A preferred shareholder, again, doesn't have the fiduciary protection. And a preferred shareholder is not a stakeholder under the fiduciary construct in the United States. But if you go to Europe, you go to South America, you go to parts of Africa, you go to parts of Asia, then the rules change. If I'm standing in Norway and I've got a publicly held company, then on my board of directors are representatives of the common shareholders. Representatives of...
So is, okay, for example, like as an American, she invites the company in the other country or something, they may follow the, you know, the local law or something.
Where the corporation's nexus is domiciled is what dictates what law. So if you have a corporation that you created in the state of Utah, United States, and it happens to do business in Romania, it's the U.S. law that governs. If you have a business that you created in China and you're doing business in the U.S., it's the Chinese law that governs. So it's where it's a function of the nexus and where that is domiciled. Okay? There are some exceptions to that, but they are unusual. Okay? And they're arguable. So Chris and I are talking about this corporation, and Chris sits on the board of directors. He doesn't own a share of common stock, nor did any common shareholder vote for him. He doesn't have any debt that money's loaned to us. He's not one of those equity or debt stakeholders, but he represents the workers. Do the workers have a vested interest in the success of the company?
Yeah.
Well, in some respects, yeah, right? Company goes down, I'm out of a job. Company does well, I keep my job, and maybe it's a better job. But in some societies, the stakeholders are also the workers, the stakeholders are the suppliers, the stakeholders are the customers, the stakeholders are the government, the society, the municipality, and some of them have gone so far as to say future generations and the environment are stakeholders. That's progressive. It might be costly. It is arguable as to whether it's always profitable or beneficially profitable, but it is the way it is. Okay? We will largely think of stakeholders as those that have common stock, preferred stock, and debt. Okay? Which means they loaned money to the company, either through the bond market, or through the bank, or through their piggy bank. Okay? It's my mom who gave me $100,000. It's the banker that gave me $5 million. It's the New York exchanges that let me run a $10 million bond offering through. Okay? Okay. Let's talk about the capital structure a little further. And I'm going to do this and introduce something called enterprise value. No, let me do something else first, I apologize. How do firms value assets? You guys have all had some accounting, some of you are really good at it. One of the ways that a firm, and when I say firm, I'm just talking about an entity. Could be a person, a firm, an investor, a company, whatever it is, okay? Firms value assets, they put them on the balance sheet, right? And we put them on at book value. What is book value? Give me just a brief description.
The amount of money that you pay for the asset.
Okay, I bought the asset, Josue, 10 years ago. Is its book value the same as it was when I bought it?
If it didn't depreciate, it depends on the depreciation, but yeah.
Fair enough. And most assets are going to have depreciation schedules, right? Yeah. So the book value is how much I paid for the asset. So I exchanged cash or credit or something in the company, gave it to the seller, brought the asset into the company, and it came onto the books at the same dollar amount as the cash or credit to left, because the balance sheet has to balance, right? But every year, there's a federal schedule that comes out that says I'm allowed to depreciate that asset by some dollar amount. The depreciation is a non-cash expenditure, right? Walter, you're never going to write a check for depreciation. So why, in accounting and in finance, are we going to get so concerned about depreciation as a number, a numeric entry? What's it? What does it represent?
The negative value.
So decrease in value, the negative value, the depletion of value, yes. Or at least it represents, it tries to represent that, right? I mean, the fact of the matter is that some legislative type folks sitting in the halls of wherever, and our buddies at the IRS got together and said, let's give them a schedule, and they give us a schedule that maybe was originally designed to try to recognize the actual depletion of value, or maybe it's designed like ACRS and MACRS, accelerated cost recovery depreciation, and modified accelerated cost recovery depreciation. Maybe it's designed to affect some economic policy of that government. Okay? It's exogenous. We never pay it. It's important. It recognizes the depletion of value, but it also recognizes something that to me is even more important. Tavita, when you bought that big printing press, it was a big AB Dick 360 color press, you paid over $1 million for it for your business. You now use that printing press to to do printed paper and material, and you have salespeople that sell that into the market, and that's how your business makes money, right?
Right.
Without that printing press, or something akin to it, how hard would it be for you to produce printed material and for your salespeople to sell? And you to make money? Yeah, like, can't do it, right? You gotta have some mechanism. There's gotta be some asset, and right now the asset's a tangible asset, right? It's that physical press. When you bought it and paid $1 million for it, you weren't allowed to expense that. It didn't decrease your taxable income that year when you bought it, until the depreciation was able to be applied. So it's the recognition of your capital investment over time. It recognizes what the productive asset cost you. Otherwise, there is nothing else that lets you recognize that cost. And you might say, well, I paid it 10 years ago. I didn't pay it today. Yeah, you paid it 10 years ago, and at the end of the first year, it still had some value. It lost some, though, right? Second year, it lost more. Third year, so on, lost more. So depreciation is important in that respect. It's a non-cash expenditure, but it is a valid, or it's as valid as we have a way to recognize that investment as it is utilized productively over time. That's book value. The next one. Market value. What's market value? Shelby, what's market value?
Right now, how much?
Shelby, you're different. How about what's market value? Say it loud.
No, just say it's right now how much about that things.
What the market
Okay.
value is.
Yeah.
So Shelby, would you like a new computer?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you, because you're going to have to get one, so you're going to sell this one, right? And when you sell it, as it turns out, I'm looking for a used computer. And you decide you want to charge $800 for it, which I think is highway robbery, by the way. But you decide you want to charge $800 for it. Is it worth $800? Do we know that yet? Just because you want to sell it for that? No. I want to pay $100 for it. Am I being a cheapskate? Yeah, I am. I think the technical term is cheap SOB. just so we're all talking the same language, okay? By the way, that's about as bad as I swear. Neither of those are the market value. If you let me buy your computer and I exchange it for some of my cash, you're indicating that my cash is more important to you than that computer, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't have accepted my cash. And I'm indicating that the computer is more important than my cash. So we both got something we thought was more important. We're both happy if we actually transact. And the number at which we transact is the market value. I have a son-in-law named Brandon. I adore Brandon. When he was 17, I couldn't stand him because he was dating my 17-year-old daughter, and he had his own apartment. Right? Thank you. Blindfolded, backwards, in the foggy dark, I could get to his apartment. I promise you. And I evidenced that to them more than once. But today, once he grew up, they got married a few years later. Once he grew up, he became a decent guy. The only problem to begin with was Brandon was a teenager, right? It's a temporary condition that we all pass through. Some of us survive, and Brandon survived. Well, Brandon's a real estate guy. He's a commercial real estate guy, owns 3 Coldwell Banker commercial franchises in Southern California, makes more than a shekel or two. And Brandon's always talking to me about something that he bought recently that was worth so much more than he paid for it. And I love Brandon. I try not to put him in his place because I love Brandon. And I say, Brandon, if it was worth more, someone else would have paid more, and you wouldn't own it today. Because the person that sold it to you they weren't charitable. They're greedy. They're Gordon Gekko. Greed is good, right? Okay, they're capitalists. It's worth exactly what the last bidder offered that the seller accepted. That's the market value. And when Tavita bought that printing press, he set the market value for that press at that moment in time as he and the seller agreed the $1 million he's going to pay, right? And it ended up on the balance sheet of the company at that moment in time at the book value, which happened to be the same thing as the market value at that moment, right? Later, market value changes, book value changes, but at that moment in time, they're the same number. Fair enough? Say yes or no.
Fair
Thank
enough.
you. Give me some sign. Okay. All right, Robert. There is a corporation on the other side of this valley that is phenomenally profitable. Employs thousands, probably tens of thousands of people in the United States, and yet more outside of the country. That my guess is almost every refrigerator in this country at one point or another has had that company's product or one very similar to it in there. And I actually happen to own a tiny bit of stock in that company. Do I care what the product is that the company provides? It is legal, okay? If there's nothing dishonorable, immoral, unethical about it. Do I care what the product is?
Not as long as it gives you a return.
Okay? So what does the company produce that I care about?
Money.
Profit. Money. Cash flow. What do corporations produce? I don't care, and corporations, assets, businesses, I don't care if it's a shoe manufacturer, a printing company, a yogurt manufacturer, I was talking about Dannon, okay? If it's a car dealership, I don't care what it is. If I'm an investor, and I'm a practical, rational investor, that which it produces for me that I care about is cash flow. So kind of think about that there's a production value for an asset, and that value is based on that which the asset produces, which is cash flow. It's going to give me $100,000 in cash flow this year. It's going to give me $100,000 in cash flow next year. It's going to give me $100,000 in cash flow the third year. So that's $300,000 combined. And at the end of the third year, at the same time, it gives me that third $100,000. Somebody else is going to take it off my hands for $1 million. So that's $1.3 million if I added all that up, right? Over 3 years. Is that cash flow nominally of $1,300,000 as valuable to me today as $1,300,000, or does it have a different value?
That's a different value.
How come?
Like it's, are we talking about like trying to find what the present value of that future cash flow is?
Exactly what we're talking
Then
about.
yes, it will have a different.
Yeah. So think about it. Cash that I receive a year from now, let's say I get $100,000 a year from now, that's not the same as $100,000 today, is it? If nothing else, inflation is going to gnaw away at it a little bit. Maybe it's not just inflation. Maybe I know that I can put $1 million, $100,000 into the market and get 9%. And if that thing doesn't give me at least 9%, then that's the rate at which it's deflating against my expectations, right? So there's some R. You guys probably know these equations. I hope you know these equations, but you certainly will soon. There's some R that when interacted with time, then changes the value of that future cash flow as I bring it back to today. I want to give Josue the exact dollar value today that the 100,000 is worth to me if I receive it a year from now. And I do that by saying its present value is equal to that 100,000 divided by 1 plus my discount rate. Let's say my discount rate is 6% to the 1. Beta T, beta means benefit. T is simply, I'll do this, beta T divided by 1 plus R to the T. Beta simply means benefit. If it's negative, it's a cost, but still it's a negative number, right? T is simply a subscript. It doesn't do anything. Just helps us keep track. In the numerator, R is the discount rate, but this T is an exponent. It represents the periods of time that transpire between now and then.
So up in the beta of the cash flow, what is the T there?
It's just a subscript. It just helps me remember that beta goes with this T, and so if this T is 1 or 5, Colin, then it goes with the 5th year.
Okay.
So it doesn't do anything. It's not an operator. It's just a subscript. It's there for information.
And the R said is discount?
Pardon?
The R is the discount?
The R is the discount rate, which might be inflation. It might be my cost of capital. It might be a hurdle rate. It might be a rationally expected return as an investor. It's whatever it happens to be from the perspective I'm looking at. And all of a sudden now we're in interpretation and art, right? Okay? So this production value is the present value of the future cash flows. How long will this company that I'm about to buy exist?
As long as it's producible.
As long as it produces something of value, it doesn't implode, right? Do I know how long that's going to be? Well, in rare circumstances, there might be a designed end, but that's pretty unusual, and that's certainly not going to be in the public markets, right? But it's possible. But I have to assume that the corporation is going to live on in perpetuity, right? Because either it lives on as a unique, independent, productive asset firm, or its disparate parts get molded into other firms, or they just get molded into scrap. But at some point, they're sold for something, or they continue on, right? So we're going to be looking at the metrics that let us think about that set of relationships. So there's a book value, a market value, and a production value. And the production value is the present value of the future cash flows. Those cash flows belong to the stakeholders, right? Why only the future cash flows? Why am I not looking at the last year's profits and its track record of profit? Why not, Shelby?
It doesn't really benefit you right now.
Okay, how come? You're right. If I buy the company today, do I have any right to its historical cash flows?
No.
No, the shareholders already have them, or they were reinvested in the company as part of what I bought, right? I'm buying the right to the future cash flows, that which has yet to take place. So, imagine, you go on the market. You're thinking about buying something. You're a prudent guy. You're savvy with numbers. You make rational decisions. You know that you're going to pay something for this if you and the seller agree. And when you pay that, it's going to set the market. You know that when it sets the market on that, that's going to be the number which you carry this on the balance sheet of your corporation. How do you know what to offer?
On the future cash flow. that I'm predicting.
You're a smart guy. You make rational decisions. And you got a whiz-bang CFO, as it turns out, okay? Who did this for you, or the chimpanzee and the iPad. Okay? Production value informs market value. Market value equals book value at the moment of the transaction. So at that singular instant in time, book value, market value, and production value are the same number. And I just wrote a page and a half of your paper. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
Okay? Because you're going to tell me, how do firms value assets? I just gave you some stuff. Any questions yet? Now, some of you know Jameson, right? Some of you are having dinner with Jameson. Go find Jameson later tonight, tomorrow, whatever, and say, Jameson, Rick talked to us for hours. There was nothing that was that hard. You freaking wimp. What are you complaining about? I say that because Jameson's my friend. Let's take a break.